The year was 2247 when the Kel Dominion found Earth. They were not looking for trouble. They were looking for resources. Their scout ships had been mapping the outer edges of the galaxy for centuries, cataloging worlds and species like a farmer counts his cattle. When they discovered the small blue planet circling an average yellow star, they expected nothing special. The Kel were insectoid creatures, tall and covered in hard black shells. They had ruled over 40 star systems for thousands of years. They had conquered hundreds of species. Some they enslaved. Others they simply erased from existence. To them, war was not a tragedy. It was a harvest. Scholar Tal was the first to study the humans closely. He spent weeks reviewing their history, their biology, their strange soft bodies. What he found made him uneasy. These creatures had survived ice ages that froze their world. They had survived plagues that killed half their population. They had split the atom and pointed it at themselves, yet somehow did not destroy their own planet. They chased animals across endless plains until those animals collapsed from exhaustion. They were, Tal realized, persistence predators. They did not stop. Ever he brought his findings to the High Council. The great chamber fell silent as he spoke. Then High Overlord Voss, supreme ruler of the Dominion, began to laugh. The others joined him. "You fear these soft bodies?" Voss said, his mandibles clicking with amusement. "Look at them. They have no claws, no shells. They bleed from the smallest cuts. They will fall in days." Tal tried to argue. He showed them footage of human wars, of soldiers charging into certain death, of cities bombed to rubble that rebuilt themselves within years. But the council did not listen. They had conquered too many worlds to fear another. Voss authorized Operation Silent Harvest. 200 warships would jump to the Sol system, destroy any resistance, and claim Earth for the Dominion. He promised his people that the campaign would last no more than 3 solar cycles. The humans would either surrender or die. There was no third option. The Dominion fleet arrived on a Tuesday morning, Earth time. They emerged from faster-than-light travel just beyond Mars, their massive ships blocking out the stars. Fleet Admiral Knox, commander of the invasion force, sent a single message to the planet below. "Surrender your world. Resistance is extinction." Captain Kang Tae was aboard the patrol vessel Defiance when the message came through. He was 42 years old, a veteran of the Mars colonial disputes, a man who had seen enough death to know its face. He stood on his bridge and watched the alien fleet spread across his view screen. Like a dark stain, his communications officer looked at him with fear in her eyes. "Sir, what do we do?" Kang Tae thought about his daughter back on Earth. She was 7 years old. She liked to catch fireflies in the summer and release them before bed. He thought about what kind of world she would grow up in if he did nothing. He pressed the transmit button. His response was broadcast across every frequency, heard by every ship in the system, recorded for history. "Come and take it from us." The war began 3 hours later. The Dominion struck Mars first. Their weapons were beyond anything humans had ever seen. Plasma cannons that melted steel like butter. Missiles that ignored human defenses as if they did not exist. The colonial cities of Olympus and New Shanghai burned. 1.2 million people died in a single day. Men, women, children. Gone in fire and screaming darkness, Earth watched in horror. For the first time in 2 centuries, the planet was united not by politics or trade, but by grief and rage. General Yunde was 71 years old. He had served in 3 wars and buried 2 sons. When he stood before the United Nations emergency session, his voice did not shake. His eyes did not water. He spoke with the calm certainty of a man who had made peace with death long ago. "They believe we are prey," he said. "They look at us and see weakness. Soft skin, short lives. They see a species that fights itself, that kills its own kind over lines on a map. They think this makes us weak." He paused. "They are wrong." He looked into the cameras that broadcast his words to every screen on the planet. "We fight ourselves because we are fighters. It is in our blood. It is in our bones. We walked out of Africa with nothing but sharpened sticks, and we conquered a world that wanted us dead. Ice tried to kill us. We survived. Disease tried to kill us. We survived. We have always survived. And now, these creatures come to our home, burn our children, and demand we kneel." His voice rose. The chamber was silent. "Let us teach them what predators truly look like." The vote was unanimous. Every nation on Earth declared war on the Kel Dominion. Old enemies shook hands. Ancient grudges were set aside. Factories that made cars began making weapons. Universities that studied stars began studying alien technology. Every man and woman who could fight volunteered. Those who could not fight built. Those who could not build prayed. Fleet Admiral Knox watched the human response with confusion. By all logic, they should have surrendered. They were outgunned, outnumbered, outmatched in every way. Yet instead of begging for mercy, they were mobilizing for total war. He sent a report to High Overlord Voss. "The humans are not behaving rationally. They appear to be preparing for extended conflict, despite certain defeat." Voss replied with a single line, "Then extend their defeat. Crush them quickly and be done with it." Knox followed orders. He sent his ships deeper into the system, burning human stations and outposts as he went. But something strange happened. The humans did not break. They did not flee. Instead, they attacked his supply lines. They rammed their small ships into his cruisers. They ejected from destroyed vessels and fired rifles at his hull. On the bridge of the Defiance, now scarred and burning, Captain Kongte smiled through the blood running down his face. "They've no idea what they've started," he whispered. He was right. The Kel Dominion had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. They had given humanity a reason to fight. 6 months into the war, Fleet Admiral Knox could not sleep. This was unusual for a Kel. His species rested in cycles, their bodies shutting down for exactly 4 hours every rotation. But Knox had not rested properly in weeks. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of his dead soldiers. Earth should have fallen by now. His fleet had superior weapons, superior numbers, superior technology. Yet the humans refused to die. They were like insects that kept crawling even after you crushed them. No matter how many Knox killed, more appeared. He stood before the holographic display in his command center, watching the latest battle reports. A supply convoy had been ambushed in the asteroid belt. 30 ships lost. Human casualties were estimated at twice that number, yet they celebrated it as a victory. What kind of species celebrated losing? Dr. Co. Yuri had not left her laboratory in 3 days. Empty coffee cups covered her desk like small monuments to exhaustion. She was 34 years old, a physicist who had once dreamed of exploring the stars in peace. Now she took apart alien weapons and learned how to kill with them. Her brother had died on Mars. He was a teacher. He taught children how to read. The Kel had burned him along with his students. Yuri kept his photograph on her wall. Every morning she looked at it before starting her work. The Prometheus program was Earth's secret hope. Scientists from every nation worked together in underground bunkers, studying crashed Dominion ships, learning their secrets. The aliens had needed centuries to develop their technology. Humans were replicating it in months. What the Kel saw as impossible, humans saw as a challenge. Yuri held up a small device no larger than her palm. It was a portable shield generator, reverse-engineered from Dominion armor. 3 weeks ago, it had not existed. Now human soldiers would carry them into battle. "For you, brother," she whispered. Lieutenant Park Hanna was not a soldier by birth. She had been a game designer before the war, creating virtual worlds where people could escape reality. Now she created real strategies that kept humanity alive. She stood before a room of admirals and generals, pointing at a 3-dimensional map of the Sol system. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with intensity. "The Kel expect us to fight like them," she said. "Large fleet formations. Direct engagements. They have done this for thousands of years. It is all they know." She smiled. "So we will not fight like them." Her plan was simple but brutal. Human pilots could survive gravitational forces that would kill most species. Their ships were smaller, faster, harder to hit. Instead of meeting the Dominion in open battle, They would strike from shadows, attack supply lines, ambush patrols, disappear before the enemy could respond. Cannot beat them in strength, Hannah said. So we will beat them in will. We will make this war so painful, so exhausting, that they will beg for it to end. The strategy worked. Within weeks, Dominion losses doubled. Nox's fleet was bleeding from 1,000 small cuts. Sergeant Beek Jin was 53 years old and built like a stone wall. He had fought in the Korean reunification, the Antarctic resource wars, and the Mars uprising. He thought he had seen everything war could offer. He was wrong. The Dominion had captured a lunar base called Armstrong Station. 5,000 Kel soldiers held it. Command gave Beek Jin 300 troops and told him to take it back. Impossible odds, his lieutenant said. Beek Jin shrugged. I have had worse. The assault lasted 72 hours. Beek Jin's soldiers fought without sleep, rotating stimulants and field surgery to keep going. They crawled through ventilation shafts. They fought hand-to-hand in dark corridors. When their ammunition ran out, they used knives. When their knives broke, they used their hands. The Kel could not understand it. Their soldiers needed rest. They needed food. They needed time to recover between engagements. But the humans never stopped coming. They attacked during what should have been sleep cycles. They pressed forward through wounds that should have been fatal. When the battle ended, 47 humans remained standing. The Kel were gone. Every single one. Beek Jin sat among the bodies, too tired to move. His uniform was soaked with blood, most of it not his own. A young soldier approached him with shaking hands. Sir, how did we do this? Beek Jin looked up at the earth rising over the lunar horizon. Blue and beautiful and worth dying for, 'cause we had no choice, he said. Scholar Tal had been monitoring the war from his research vessel, gathering data on human behavior. What he found terrified him. He had spent his life studying conquered species, documenting how they broke under Dominion pressure. The patterns were always the same. Resistance, followed by despair, followed by surrender. Humans did not follow the pattern. He discovered why in an ancient human text about hunting. Humans were persistence predators. Their ancestors did not chase prey with speed or strength. They simply followed. For hours. For days. Until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. This instinct had never left them. It had evolved into something far more dangerous. Humans did not just refuse to surrender. They could not surrender. Their brains were wired to keep going, to push through pain, to outlast any enemy. Tal sent an urgent message to Nox. We are not fighting a species. We are fighting an evolutionary nightmare. They will not stop until we are destroyed, or they are. There is no middle ground. Nox read the message and felt cold fear crawl through his shell, far above Earth. Captain Kang Tae led a daring raid on a damaged Dominion cruiser. The ship was crippled, drifting, but its faster-than-light drive was intact. Human soldiers fought through its corridors for 6 hours, losing half their number. Until they reached the engine room, Kang Tae stood before the alien machinery, his reflection warped in its strange metal surface. This was the key to everything. With this drive, humans could leave their home system. They could take the war to the enemy. He thought about his daughter again, about the fireflies she loved, about the summer nights he might never see. Send word to Earth, he said into his radio. We have what we need. The war was about to change. Humanity was no longer trapped. They were coming. The Earth's expeditionary fleet jumped into the Vega system on the morning of humanity's darkest hour. 50 ships, carrying 10,000 soldiers, appearing from nothing in the heart of enemy territory. By any military standard, it was suicide. The Dominion had 300 vessels guarding their forward base. Human ships were smaller, weaker, and far from home. None of that mattered. Captain Kang Tae stood on the bridge of the Defiance. It's now upgraded with stolen Dominion technology. His ship hummed with power it was never designed to hold. Human engineers had torn apart alien systems and rebuilt them with duct tape and determination. The result was something new, something dangerous. All ships, report ready status, Kang Tae said. 50 voices answered. 50 crews prepared to die. The Dominion detected them within minutes. Admiral Knox, still commanding from his flagship, watched the human fleet appear on his sensors with disbelief. He had spent 2 years fighting these creatures in their home system. He knew they were stubborn. He knew they were dangerous. But he never expected them to be insane. "They have brought 50 ships against 300, his officer said. "This is not a battle. This is a slaughter." Knox shook his head slowly. "No, this is a statement." He understood then what Scholar Tal had tried to tell him. Humans did not calculate odds the way other species did. They did not weigh risk against reward. They simply decided what they wanted and pursued it until they succeeded or died trying. There was no surrender in their nature. No retreat. The Battle of Vega began with fire. Human ships scattered like seeds in wind, moving in patterns that made no tactical sense. They flew into asteroid fields that should have torn them apart. They skimmed along the surfaces of moons, using gravity to slingshot into impossible angles. Their pilots pulled maneuvers that crushed internal organs, that ruptured blood vessels, that should have killed them instantly. But humans had trained for this. They had wrapped their bodies in pressure suits and pumped themselves full of drugs that kept their hearts beating through forces that would liquefy a Kel. They laughed as they died. They cheered as they burned. And they kept fighting. Lieutenant Park Hanna coordinated the battle from the Defiance's command deck, fingers dancing across holographic displays. She had not slept in 30 hours. Her eyes were red, her hands trembling, but her mind was sharp as glass. Squadron 7, draw their cruisers toward the debris field. Squadron 3, prepare for a boarding run on their supply station. All other units, keep them busy. The Dominion fleet was larger, but it was slow. It was designed for overwhelming force, not chaotic warfare. Human ships darted between the massive alien vessels like wasps attacking a bear. They could not win through firepower, so they won through confusion. Then the Kel boarded the Defiance. The breach came through the lower decks. 20 Kel soldiers, each one 8 feet tall with razor-sharp claws and armor that could stop bullets. They carved through the outer defenses in minutes, heading for the bridge. Hannah saw them on the internal cameras. She watched her crew fall one by one. She felt fear, cold, and heavy in her stomach. Then she remembered her parents, who had died when the Dominion bombed Seoul. She remembered the promise she made it there, memorial never again. When the Kel burst through the bridge doors, Hannah was waiting. She had no weapon except a fire extinguisher and for years of rage. The fight lasted 12 seconds. Hannah moved like water, ducking under claws, smashing the heavy metal cylinder into joints and eyes and anywhere that looked soft. She was small and fast and absolutely without mercy. 3 Kel fell before backup arrived. The rest died screaming. Hannah returned to her console with alien blood dripping from her uniform. She wiped her face with her sleeve and continued issuing orders. Squadron 7, status report. Scholar Tal watched the battle from the brig of a human destroyer. He had been captured 3 months earlier, expecting torture and death. Instead, he had been given a small cell with a bed and regular meals. When he asked why, his guard had shrugged. "Because we are not like you," the soldier said. Now Tal listened to the sounds of combat through the walls. He heard human voices shouting, some in pain, some in triumph. He heard explosions and alarms and the screech of tearing metal. And beneath it all, he heard something he had never encountered in 1,000. Here's a galactic war. Hope these creatures were dying by the hundreds. Their ships were burning. They were outnumbered 6-1, and yet they believed they could win. Not because they were foolish, because they had decided to win. And humans did not change their minds. When the battle ended, the Dominion had lost 70% of their Vega fleet. Humanity had lost 60% of their small force. By any rational measure, it was a draw at best. The humans celebrated like they had won the war. Kangtae stood among his crew as they cheered and wept, and held each other. He was exhausted beyond words. His ship was held together by prayers and welding. Half his friends were dead, but they had done it. They had taken the fight to the enemy. They had proven that humanity would not stay in its cage. Across the galaxy, other species watched. The Vorn, enslaved for 3,000 years. The Telkai, whose homeworld had been strip-mined to dust. The Reth, who had forgotten they once had a word for freedom. They watched the battle recordings stolen from Dominion channels. They saw small ships charging into certain death. They saw humans fighting with broken bodies and burning hearts. And for the first time in millennia, they began to whisper, "Maybe we can fight too." High Overlord Voss received the news of Vega in his throne room. He sat in silence for a long time, his ancient body perfectly still. His advisors watched nervously, afraid to speak. Finally, Voss raised his head. His eyes were not angry. They were afraid. "Prepare the Void Hammer," he said. If he could not conquer humanity, he would erase them from existence. The war had entered its final phase. The Void Hammer was the Dominion's final solution. A weapon so terrible that even the Kel had used it only twice in their long history. It did not simply destroy planets. It erased them. It tore holes in the fabric of space itself. Swallowing worlds into darkness that had no name, Scholar Tal revealed its existence in a secret transmission to the human fleet. He had spent weeks gathering information, risking execution, because he had seen something in humanity that he had never seen in any other species. He had seen mercy. "They will use it on Earth," he warned. "You have perhaps 3 weeks before it reaches your system. The Void Hammer requires a stable jump point. They will bring it through the Void Gate, a massive structure at the edge of Dominion space. That is where you must stop it." General Yunde received the transmission in his command bunker deep beneath the Korean mountains. He was old now, his hair completely white, his hands marked with age. But his eyes were still sharp. His will was still iron. He called every admiral and captain in the human fleet. The holographic display showed 200 ships gathered from across human space. It was everything they had. "The enemy has a weapon that can destroy our world," he said. 800 ships guard it. We have 200. The odds are against us. They have always been against us." He paused, looking at the faces of his commanders. He saw fear there. He also saw determination. "We did not survive ice ages by accepting bad odds. We did not crawl out of caves by surrendering to larger predators. We are here because every generation before us refused to die quietly. I will not be the one who breaks that chain." Captain Kang Tae volunteered to lead the assault. His ship, the Defiance, had been repaired so many times that barely any original metal remained. It was more scar tissue than vessel. Like its captain, the night before the fleet departed, Kang Tae recorded a message for his daughter. She was 9 now. He had not seen her in 2 years. In the recording, his voice did not shake, though his heart was breaking. "I am sorry I will not see you grow up," he said. "I am sorry I will miss your first dance, your first love, your first heartbreak. But because of what we do tomorrow, you will have all those things. You will have a future. That is what fathers do. They carry the weight so their children can walk free." Ended the recording and sent it to Earth. Then he walked to the bridge of his ship and prepared for war. The Battle of the Void Gate was the largest military engagement in galactic history. 200 human ships jumped into a wall of 800 Dominion vessels. Behind them, the Void Hammer sat like a dark god, waiting to swallow a world from the first moment. Everything went wrong. Human ships died by the dozens in the opening minutes. Dominion weapons tore through shields and armor like paper. The darkness of space filled with fire and screaming metal. Kang Tae's ship was hit within the first hour. The blast tore through the starboard section, killing 30 crew instantly. Systems failed. Lights flickered. The Defiance began to drift. Lieutenant Park Hannah was on the bridge when the captain's voice crackled through the damaged speakers. "Anna, I am trapped in the lower section. Fires everywhere. I am not getting out." She felt the words like a knife in her chest. Kang Tae had been more than a commander. He had been a mentor, friend, a father figure when her own parents were gone. "Sir, we can send rescue teams. No time. The fleet needs guidance. You have to lead them now." Silence hung between them. A lifetime of unspoken words. Make them remember us, Kongte said. Then the connection died. Hannah stood frozen for 3 seconds. She allowed herself that much grief. Then she turned to her crew, her face hard as stone. All ships. This is Lieutenant Park Hannah, assuming command. Adjust formation. We are not dying here today. She led them into the heart of the Dominion fleet. Her voice never wavered. Her hands never shook. She became the thing that humans had always been in their darkest moments. A survivor who refused to break. Sergeant Beek Jin was aboard one of the boarding ships. His mission was simple and impossible. Land on the Void Hammer. Fight through 2,000 Kel guards. Destroy the weapons core. He had 50 soldiers with him. Most were young, barely out of training. They looked at him with eyes full of fear and trust. I will not lie to you, he said before they launched. Most of us will die in there. Maybe all of us. But if we succeed, Earth lives. Your families live. That is worth more than anything we could do with the rest of our years. The boarding was a nightmare. Kel soldiers swarmed them from every direction. Beek Jin's team fought through corridors filled with bodies. They used grenades when they had them, rifles when they could, hands when they had nothing else. By the time they reached the weapons core, only 7 remained. Beek Jin was wounded in 3 places. His left arm hung useless at his side. Blood filled his boots. The core was a massive sphere of swirling darkness, contained by machines that hummed with terrible power. Beek Jin looked at it and understood. He could not destroy it from outside. He would have to go in. He turned to his soldiers. Get to the escape pods. Tell them we succeeded. Sir, you cannot go. Now, that is an order. They went. Beek Jin was alone with the heart of annihilation. He thought about his wife, dead now for 20 years. He thought about his son, killed on Mars when this all began. He thought about the world he was saving, full of people he would never meet. He smiled. It was enough. He walked into the core and detonated every explosive he carried. The Void Hammer died in a flash of light so bright it could be seen from 3 star systems. The Dominion fleet, caught in the shockwave, lost half their remaining ships. The others fled in chaos. Lieutenant Park Hannah watched the explosion from her damaged bridge. Tears ran down her face, but her voice was steady when she broadcast to the surviving fleet. The weapon is destroyed. The enemy is running. Today, humanity has won. Across the galaxy, enslaved species who had been watching in secret erupted in rebellion. The Dominion's grip was finally broken, and in the wreckage of the Defiance buried beneath collapsed beams and fire. Captain Kang Tae opened his eyes. He was alive. Barely, but alive. His first thought was of his daughter. His second thought was of home. 5 years had passed since the Battle of the Void Gate. The war was over. The Dominion was broken, and humanity had become something it never expected to be. A legend. The Treaty of Seoul was signed aboard the Defiance, now permanently anchored in orbit above Earth as a museum and monument. High Overlord Voss stood before the assembled leaders of humanity, his one-sprout form bent with age and defeat. Behind him, cameras broadcast to 100 worlds. The Kel Dominion formally surrenders, he said, his voice hollow. We recognize the sovereignty of Earth and all human colonies. We agree to release all enslaved species under our control. We submit to the terms of peace. General Yoon-dae accepted the surrender with a simple nod. He was 81 now, confined to a wheelchair, but his mind was still sharp. He had refused to let anyone else represent humanity at this moment. He had started this fight. He would see it end. After the ceremony, he gave his final public address. The speech was broadcast to every corner of human space and beyond. A species who had never heard a human voice listened with something close to reverence. We did not win because we were stronger, he said. We were never stronger. We did not win because we were smarter. Our enemies had technology we could barely understand. We won because we refused to lose. That is all. That is everything. He paused, looking at the stars visible through the viewport. My generation will be remembered as warriors. I hope the next generation will be remembered as builders. We have proven we can destroy. Now let us prove we can create. He died 3 months later, peacefully in his sleep. Half the galaxy mourned. Dr. Co. Yuri stood in her laboratory for the last time. In her hands, she held a small container. Inside was the Prometheus virus, the weapon she had created that could have wiped out the Kel species entirely. She had never told anyone, but there were nights during the war when she had considered using it. Nights when grief and rage had nearly consumed her. Her assistant stood nearby, watching nervously. "Are you sure about this, Doctor?" Yuri thought about her brother. His kind face, his gentle hands, the way he used to laugh at her terrible jokes. He would not have wanted this weapon to exist. He had spent his life teaching children to read. Believing that knowledge was better than violence, she walked to the incinerator and opened the door. Heat washed over her face. "We proved we could end them," she said. "Now we prove we choose not to." Dropped the container into the flames and watched it. Scholar Tal became the first alien ambassador to Earth. It was a strange fate for a researcher who had once studied humans like specimens. Now he walked among them, learned their customs, ate their food, listened to their music. He founded the Institute for Galactic Understanding. It's dedicated to ensuring that no species would ever underestimate another again. The Kel saw humans as weak because they were soft, he wrote in his memoirs. We did not understand that softness can be strength. Humans feel pain deeply. They love fiercely. They grieve without end. These things we saw as flaws, they were weapons. A species that loves their children enough to die for them cannot be defeated. They can only be delayed. Captain Kong Tae retired to a small farm in the Korean countryside. His injuries had healed, mostly though he still walked with a limp, and his left eye saw only shadows. He did not mind. He was alive. After everything, that felt like a miracle. His daughter was 14 now. She had grown tall and serious, with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn jaw. On weekends, he taught her to fish in the stream behind their house. They would sit together in comfortable silence, watching the water flow past. One evening, she asked him about the war. She had learned about it in school, seen the documentaries, read the histories, but she wanted to hear it from him. Kong Tae was quiet for a long time. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "We did terrible things," he finally said. "Things I still see when I close my eyes. But we did them so that you would not have to. So that you could sit here on this farm and worry about nothing more than whether the fish are biting." She leaned against his shoulder. "Do you regret it?" He thought about the friends he had lost, the battles he had fought, the years he had missed with his family. "No," he said. "I would do it all again. For you, for everyone." Lieutenant Parkana became Admiral Parkana, the first human commander of the Galactic Coalition. The alliance included 23 species, all former subjects of the Dominion. Now united under principles of mutual defense and cooperation, she spent her days in meetings and negotiations, building the peace that so many had died to create. Sometimes, late at night, she would visit the memorial on Mars. It was a simple structure, a wall of black stone with names carved into its surface. 1.2 million names. Every human who had died when the Dominion first attacked, she would trace the names with her fingers and remember why they had fought. A monument was built on the site of Old Seoul. Where the first bombs had fallen, it listed every human who had died in the war. 3 million names arranged in spiraling patterns that could be seen from orbit. At its base was a single inscription, chosen by vote from billions of suggestions. "They came to harvest us. They found only thorns." The final scene of this story takes place 10 years after the war's end. A young Kel student arrived on Earth as part of an exchange program. She was nervous, surrounded by the species that had destroyed her people's empire. Her guide was an old human man, missing his right arm from the elbow down. He walked slowly, but his eyes were kind. "Why did you fight so hard?" she asked as they stood before the Seoul Memorial. "You could have surrendered. You could have lived under our rule." "Many species did," the old man smiled. He had been asked this question many times. He always gave the same answer. 'Cause someone had to, and we were too stubborn to die. The young Kel looked at the names on the wall. So many dead, so much sacrifice. For a species that the Dominion had dismissed as weak? I do not understand, she admitted. The old man patted her shoulder gently. You will. Give it time. They walked away together, the former enemy and the former soldier, under a sky that belonged to everyone now. Across the galaxy, a new saying had spread among the stars. It was whispered by species who had lived in chains and now walked free. It was taught to children who would never know war. It became a warning and a promise and a prayer. Never wake the humans. Never corner them. Never give them a reason to fight. For they are the children of a world that tried to kill them every day, and they loved it anyway. The stars had new guardians now, and they would not forget.